Okay, Kimi is 3-4 days here in our region. She was yesterday on the demonstration from Occupy, and she will be 2 days later on Tuesday in Hanau, my city, for another evening where we want to mainly focus on the Excluded Workers Congress and this precarization or the self-organization processes against precarization. Today, of course, you are free to ask about this later after the next 2-3 questions. But here, of course, in the Occupy camp, we decided mainly to focus on the question of the Occupy movement and the new developments in US inspired by the Occupy movement. So I first continue with 2 more questions, then we open the space for your questions. One is perhaps briefly to explain us what later on happened with Occupy Oakland, because it was evicted, it's now spread in working groups, and what is a situation in moment with Occupy Oakland, or perhaps even a comment to the general situation of the Occupy movement in US.
Yes, so there was actually a coordinated effort by the mayors, the government of the cities in the US to start clearing out the camps. So what happened was some cities had camps that the police just came in and took away right away. Others, like San Francisco, Chicago, Denver, like there's some cities that had camps for a little while. But then all the mayors talked to each other and said, what should we do? How can we fix this? What's going on? And so they decided that they needed to clear them out. And so we saw a series of all the big cities just get completely annihilated, like we're very close to each other because the mayors started to talk to each other. And so what happened in Oakland, though, was there was the first clearing out that there was actually a lot of violence, and you probably saw on TV, tear gas and rubber bullets and all that. The mayor then, because she's actually a progressive mayor, let the camp come back afterwards. She apologized for the violence. She said, I wasn't in town, it wasn't my fault, I'm sorry, come again. And so they all came back again. Then she said, oh, but you can't sleep here. But of course, everybody still slept there. So then the camp came back. But because of the pressure from all the other cities, they all basically said, don't let them stay because they're going to never go away. If you let them stay, they're going to just stay there forever. So there was this pressure. So she then, so then they came in again and cleared it out. And so they tried to find other parks. They moved to other areas, and each time they got cleared out. And so the Occupy encampment itself does not exist, but there was a few attempts to try to open up new spaces, and because the government then had decided we can't let them stay, that was it. So they have not been able to open up again. They did then try to take over buildings that had been abandoned. So if you saw in January, there was the open the commune, like a commune they tried to open. They've also tried to take over another Travelers Aid Society building that's in downtown, but the police just would not let them even establish themselves. So right now it's very strict. They cannot, and actually some of the organizers, there are restraining orders against them. They can't even go near the plaza or they can get arrested. So it's very difficult for them to organize centrally because the police now have these different tactics to just arrest people. So for now, the biggest thing, Occupy Oakland is split into committees so that people are working. There's Occupy Garden, there's a kitchen, there's education group, there's smaller committees working on issues locally, but there's no encampment anymore. And then we started to then look at Occupy the neighborhood. So this idea that really in the US there's this issue of foreclosures. I think if you guys know about the banks.
Die Zwangsräumung, ja? Foreclosures, die Zwangsräumung von Menschen, die wegen Krediten dann ihre Wohnungen oder Häuser verlieren.
So many people have been losing their homes because the banks have been taking back the homes and closing down on them. And so the new effort then was to occupy the homes that have been foreclosed. So from December to January, for about 6 weeks, actually, they're able to occupy a home of one of the members of one of the organizations that have been kicked out. So we made that a space for workshops and meetings and children's activities, and so that became the Occupy space for a month. But then the police then came and cleared that out as well. So from there, people have been trying to figure out what's next. But this idea of the smaller committees kind of continuing to do the work is how people have continue to express themselves.
Okay, then my last question is about, I guess you mentioned it yesterday, under the term or the slogan of 99 Spring. There is obviously, another movement or another mobilization just in US, and as I understood, all over US, also somehow inspired at least or encouraged through the Occupy movement. Perhaps you can explain briefly what it's about, this mobilization.
So one of the big debates was about how much energy do we keep moving on these camps, right? How much energy do you keep the camp open versus trying to continue to work on the issues that the camp was trying to address? So I think that's still there, but for a lot of people they thought, well, what can we do to be on the offensive? And so this idea of a spring offensive came out. This idea that we should be training people to talk about a new economy, and that we should think about, how can we continue to work together if there's an Occupy space or not. And so the 99 Spring came out of this idea of the 99 versus the 1%. And so while Occupy kind of opened up people's minds around all the problems going on, one of the themes that resonated with people was 1% versus 99. And so a lot of people fall and identify with being part of the 99%. And so people thought, well, let's train as many people as we can, and let's just start to have actions. And so this idea of 99 Spring training came out, and in 1 week trained about 100,000 people in the US. And it was the same, and what happened was there was 1,000 people trained to be trainers, to do all these trainings. MoveOn.org, I don't know if you guys know them, they're more of an internet organizing space, but we were able to use their technology for people to sign up for trainings and then get connected locally to other people. And so MoveOn.org has a very extensive internet kind of base. They have 70 million contacts, right? So we were able to use their technology to help with these trainings. So those trainings happened, and now over the next 2 months, there's over 1,000 actions, part of the Power Spring 99, that are happening. So it's all being connected, so that people are registering the actions, they're connecting through these trainings, and there's over 1,000 actions that are being planned over the next 2 months.
Can you give an example? What is planned? The 1st of May is integrated. Is the 12th of May as a Global Action Day also integrated? Or it's mainly about foreclosures, or it's a wide spectrum of action? Perhaps a few examples as the last.
Everything. So as long as you identify as being part of the 99, you sign up your action. And so there are actions against the banks. So Wells Fargo, Bank of America are very large banks in the US that people blame for the foreclosure crisis. And so people are targeting their shareholder meetings. So in San Francisco, there's shareholder meetings. We're organizing one in North Carolina, which is in the South, against Bank of America. People are going after the CEOs of the companies, so the presidents, the CEOs, going to their houses.
Homes.
Yes. You can find them, yes, because they're, So going, just making the connections, because there's some, the 1% is actually, 1%, and they're connected though to many different companies and many different banks. And so we have found individuals that have ties to Walmart and Wells Fargo and Citibank, and so all the financial institutions. But we also, in terms of the environment, there are actions around different environmental movement like climate justice, and people, the banks that invest in coal mining. There's just a lot of different connections have been made through the 99 Spring. And so so there's bank actions that I just mentioned, the environmental actions. May 1st in the Bay Area has become a series of events. And so the first is to close the Golden Gate Bridge. If you guys know San Francisco, that red bridge. So they're going to close that in the morning, go through San Francisco Financial District, close that down. The afternoon is an immigrants' rights march in Oakland side. And then I think in the evening there's a party of some sort. But the idea being that all day long there's things happening May 1st. And then the global day, again, it's like depends on which area you're in. I think there's different participation. Across the country, you know, so New York's got a lot of stuff happening. Chicago, all the metropolitan cities have a series of things happening.
To open it up for you to questions. If you speak loud, okay. If not, take the microphone.
I would have a question.
Okay, I say 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Okay.
You start.
Now the question I have is, what you're saying about what's called the Occupy idea in the U.S. sounds more promising to me than what I have.
Take this, please. I think the people behind you will not hear it.
Okay. Now the idea I had about the whole thing is that in the U.S. it seems to be rather turning backwards and forwards right now. On the other side, what you're saying there is quite optimistic, it sounds at least. Would you say, despite the election coming ahead right now and all of that, that there will still be enough awareness for the problem throughout the election, perhaps over the election? What would you say concerns of that?
Hand it over to her, please. We collect at least 3, 4, 5 questions. And
we were talking about trainings that over 100,000 people were taking.
Louder.
What did these trainings look like?
She was...
I'm glad to hear that you're going after Wells' fuck up. And under what pretext did the Oakland police close a person's home to your meetings?
Yes, this is a more general question about how to organize a camp. Like I would like to say from the perspective of Occupy Frankfurt, since a half year. So if we look at which kind of people are here, so we have the campers, we have like political or economic experts, but who don't live here, who are like agitating more from the outside. Some even are not here in Frankfurt. We use like telephone and internet like to communicate with each other. Then here, the special place here in Frankfurt, it attracts a lot of people who are, well, how to say, are not so well fitted like for participating in a local organization group, but even to work in those political, social, and financial issues and all this stuff. So okay, I think the day life there arose many problems also. Have you any advice for us, like how it went like in Oakland or from some other camps, or which were the problems over there, where you come from, and what could give you as an advice for that all those groups and people harmonize better together? Thank you.
Hello? Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back again. So thank you for those questions. They're great. Yes, I want to recognize the Occupy movement definitely has been ups and downs for folks, and I think they're still struggling, right? And so to say, like, when I said that, you know, the idea that the encampment is not there anymore, there's no central space, it is making it very difficult for it to stay together. But some of the folks, you know, really do feel like they want to keep doing something, and so this idea of breaking into the smaller committees. So some folks are doing gardening every week. Some folks have, you know, taken over smaller spaces. They're still doing outreach in the neighborhood. They are, you know, going to school closures. They're still doing things, but just trying to figure out how. So it is very difficult. And like I had said, you know, this idea that all the mayors and all the governments got together and said, you know, we can't allow these camps to happen anymore. So that has been very difficult for a lot of the organizers. You know, like I said, some of them would get arrested for just being in the area of where the old camp used to be. So there's definitely a lot of things going on that people have to try to figure out. But I think that actually it is helping with the election, right? Because there's so many problems. And even though Obama came in and everyone was very excited about him, he ended up being much more, you know, kind of conservative Democrat. And so I think, though, it is challenging. And so this idea of the 99% does cover a lot of folks. And so there's different people, you know, some will say, yes, we should work with everybody. Others are still more on, they're Democrats, we shouldn't work with that. You know, I mean, you're going to have divisions wherever you are. So I think it is... folks are just trying to figure out who they can work with and how, but I think on my part I would say, you know, we have to try to work with whoever we can. And so this idea that the 99% does cover a lot of folks, you know, we're trying to work within that parameter, but you know, there's still difficulties and limitations in that. So part of this idea of the training, though, then was to try to get people to even to have the same definition of what is a new economy. And so there were a handful of folks that actually created the training. It's actually online. I can share it with you all. But this idea of, what does it mean to ask for a new economy? What could it be? What are we demanding? To have a training with that kind of shared information and understanding was really important. And so the training is also actually going to be online for people that weren't able to go to the physical trainings. But this idea of really having everyone kind of thinking about what is a new economy. Because you can sit there and complain about it all you want, but what does it really mean to talk about a new economy, right? So that's actually why the trainings were really important, and why we're continuing to kind of hope people use it and continue to kind of integrate it into their own organizing work. There was a question about the Oakland situation and how could the police come into, stop people from meeting in a home. It was actually, we took over a home that was foreclosed on. So what happens in foreclosure is once you're unable to pay your loan to the banks can kick you out of that home. And there's a process where they have to post it and do all these things. Eventually your house could be resold at what they call as a short sale, or they actually auction it off. And so this home was actually slated for auction. It was foreclosed on, the family was evicted, and so the Occupy folks just broke in. Basically, they just broke a lock and then lived in the house, right? And so then the police were able to, because the bank said, we don't want them there. So they were able to stay there for about 6 weeks before the bank actually moved on it. But if you look at the numbers, there's actually millions of foreclosed homes in the US right now, and so this idea of just take over these empty houses, they're not going to kick everyone out, but the issue is you got to get just numbers to do that, right? So I think there's this kind of talk about that, just because there are so many empty homes. I live in Oakland and I have 6 empty homes around me, right? Out of 10 houses, 6 are empty. So it's all over the place. So trying to think of all the questions. There was more of an internal question about just problems within the camp and kind of how to work within the camp. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't part of organizing the camp itself. I was just part of the outskirts of the folks that were doing the organizing on the outside. But I do know many of the camps had the same situation where, because of the fact that there's no other place to go, your camp becomes a little city, right? And so folks that need food or housing or anything else come here. And actually in Oakland it was a beautiful thing. There was a little garden, there was a little hospital, there was food, they were feeding hundreds and hundreds of people, and it just opened up kind of what is a new society that we'd like. And so it's hard because there's not enough social services in our communities to handle everyone, to help everyone that needs help. So the space became that, and so I think people tried to juggle that, because then you could be consumed with just providing food for everyone that needs food or shelter. And so I think, again, it goes back to where does your energy go? And so, though, what Oakland did was they partnered with the nurses union. So the nurses union came, and they were the ones that staffed the hospital, the little first aid area, and then they partnered with different folks to take over different pieces. And so it really became this very beautiful community where everyone was helping each other. But it just points more to the larger problems that our communities are not being cared for. And so I think it's hard, and I think all the Occupy camps that I've talked to or heard about, same issues came up, where it became a space because it was friendly. People found, hey, you could go get food there, and hey, there's shelter there, and oh, there's a place to be. So it was more, kind of a wake-up call to folks that there just really isn't enough support services out there. So that's just hard. I don't have a simple answer for that one. Sorry.
I have one more question concerning the training. It was also a practical training for civil disobedience, or did I misunderstood as another part? But perhaps we also collect some more questions again in the second round. There are 3 more friends who want to speak.
What you experience, would you call the US still a democratic state from your point of view? This was my first question.
Which states are democratic and which aren't?
I was wondering, you know, you probably, I don't know how many people are actually active in Occupy Oakland, or sorry, I don't know how many people are actually active in Occupy Oakland or in Occupy Frankfurt, but wouldn't it be possible to rent a space? I mean, even though it might not be perfectly politically correct as far as Occupy is concerned, but wouldn't it be possible to rent a space in which to have meetings, etc.?
Yes, hello. First I want to say I think the movement should be non-violent, but what I saw on YouTube, there was on a Occupy demonstration in the US, there were like veterans with semi-automatic rifles between the demonstrators and the police, and they said they will come back, and as far as I looked into YouTube, they are forming some kind of militia there, or veterans who say when well, we get our country back like that. And do you see something like I don't want to say civil war, but problems between veterans who arm themselves against the government?
I'll do the last question first. I actually have not seen that at all, so we haven't, or in my experience, have not seen anyone armed on our side. It really has been the police. And what's interesting is that the police departments actually have all this crazy military gear because of post 9/11 and kind of like a lot of 9/11 stuff that happened, and because the government agencies are shrinking, a lot of the police agencies got a lot of the state like terrorist stuff. So these small little cities have tanks and like crazy things that they got on sale from the other government. But anyway, but on our side we have been putting forward nonviolent direct action, and actually the spring training was all about nonviolent direct action and how learning from the civil rights movement, learning from the different movements of the past, it was really to train people in nonviolent direct action. So that was, yeah. So just a little bit more about the training. We actually had two versions. There was an 8-hour training and a 3-hour training. And both of them, though, really were about getting people to share their own stories about how they fit into the 99%, kind of what they want out of a new economy. And then also then a really big part of it was about nonviolent direct action. What does it mean? How do you do that? And then actually people practiced. They picked a local action and they pretended they were going through it and what it would mean to do it. And so actually from some of those trainings, people went straight into an action and marched down to a bank and they did actions.